Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Fields. I'm a psychologist who specializes in gambling addiction. Not only do I help individuals regain control over their lives, but I'm also focused on helping financial institutions really put an end to this widespread issue that I argue is costing the financial industry a lot of money because so many of their employees are squandering work time on gambling. Years ago, cocaine use was rampant in the financial industry, especially the investment banking sector. People having to work 80 plus hours per week, they needed something, or at least felt they needed something to keep them going. And it also served as an all important carrot so that they could be rewarded on this intermittent type of schedule where every half an hour or an hour they could take a hit and that would get them through the next very busy and daunting hour. And they would do this day in and day out. Now, certainly not to say that everybody in investment banking in the 80s was doing cocaine, but certainly a lot of people were. Now, you don't hear about cocaine use being as widespread in the financial industry anymore. And I think a lot of my colleagues would argue that's because of the advent of stimulants like Adderall and Ritalin that have also been abused quite a bunch. But my premise is that something else has taken over. Something else has taken precedent in terms of the almighty carrot that helps workers, especially those in investment banking and those areas of finance that require a tremendous time commitment. We're talking about people that are still working well over 60 hours a week. And this new carrot is gambling. Gambling is what gets them through hour by hour. And again, not to say that everybody in investment banking is compulsively gambling, but a lot of people are. And I know this because of how many patients that I work with that are in finance and are working these really hectic schedules and relying on gambling to get them through the day. It's the new cocaine for the financial industry. Cocaine was in the 80s. And then we saw in, let's say, the new millennium, the advent of abusing and relying on stimulants. And not just in the financial sector. Certainly, a lot of college students were relying on that as well. But now, the new Coke is gambling. Gambling, I would argue, compulsive gambling, gambling addiction, is probably the most dangerous of all the carrots. Now, I know that that might be a controversial statement given how powerful of a substance cocaine is and the very real possibility that somebody could overdose and die on it. But the reality of the situation is that cocaine overdose is not that common. An overdose from stimulants, in terms of prescribed stimulants like Adderall and Ritalin, is not so common. Of course, there are many, many other negative consequences to abusing or misusing drugs. And they certainly can have a negative impact on you physically and mentally. But here's the difference. And here's why I think compulsive gambling trumps them all in terms of danger. If you get addicted to cocaine or another type of stimulant, the negative consequences can be quite severe. But the negative consequences of compulsive gambling can be absolutely devastating and completely life altering. This disorder does not only wreak havoc on your mental health, and it also has the danger of potentially dying from it. How? By way of suicide. Why? Because just like with drugs, the person feels so out of control, but the damage can be so severe. We're talking about complete and utter financial ruin. Could you imagine coming to the office after a night or a weekend of losing tens of thousands of dollars, money that you worked so hard for, money that you work day in and day out, 60, 70 plus hour weeks, and now you're going to work and you have nothing to show for it? Could you imagine having debt collectors and collection agencies harassing you constantly? Your wife or spouse threatening divorce and not being able to see any way out. Debt that can be so crushing. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, where it seems like there will never be an end in sight. People losing homes over this. Gambling addiction, I think, is one of the most dangerous addictions. And again, not to minimize the dangers of misusing stimulants like cocaine and the very real possibility of overdosing and dying. But when you look at how many people who compulsively gamble are in significant debt, and the effect that that has on one's ability to focus on their job, on one's ability to function on the job, to be able to provide for their family. You have mouths to feed and a family that's relying on your income. And then how often people with gambling addiction keep this a secret from loved ones, and how that weighs on them, and the stress and the toll of that. Listen, fields like investment banking, the stress level is already off the charts. What keeps people going in the finance world is the prospect of earning more and more money, saving more and more money, getting more and more ahead financially. When you take that away and actually reverse the trend where they're behind most people in terms of financial status or ability to provide for themselves or their family, that is a very dire situation. Gambling addiction is the new Coke for the financial world. And if this doesn't get addressed soon, the damage is just going to keep growing exponentially. not just for the individuals afflicted with this disorder, but for so many financial institutions that rely on them for their performance and work output. This is Dr. Eric Fields, and I'll have more to say about this at another time. If you or a loved one struggling with gambling addiction, any kind of drug or alcohol addiction, please reach out for help. These are all treatable.